I'm seeing yours for the first time, and I will definitely argue over yours.
Bring it on.
What's going on, everybody? Today's video, we're going to be looking at 11 of the key benefits of a life insurance policy. And the beautiful thing is my 11 benefits and how I talk about it is different than Alden's. And what we're also going to do is we're not just going to give you the 11 benefits. We're going to rank them starting from 11 to number 1. It'll be like a sports top 10, but where they're 11 countdown. And so this is going to be fun. We've never done content like this, but more and more, as we're interacting with individuals, Alden, I'm realizing that people, and especially our clients and people that watch this channel, a lot of times they might look at life insurance as it's an amazing strategy for like one of the benefits. And like, I feel like people are undervaluing, underselling, and underappreciating a properly designed life insurance product and what it can do for their entire financial portfolio, their life, how they show up. And so this way of making content is just a way of being creative, but also just helping people think outside the box, because we talk about life insurance as an and when you go through the list, you like how Alden words things better than mine. And the reality is all the things that we're talking about, if you have your life insurance product that's set up and used properly, it's an and. It's not that you get to pick 5 out of these or pick one or the other. It's an and so anything that you want to say before we jump into this?
And I think it's going to be a great episode because one of the things I like to say is that planning does not happen in a vacuum. And what I mean by that is who you are, what you need, and your values coming into the call kind of direct how we present what we present. One of the things you're going to see between Caleb and I'm assuming, is that our lists are not going to match because we're different people. We have different value sets when it comes to this type of product. But our job in a conversation with any possible clients and in our existing clients is to identify their values, and then how can we translate their values into what we position for them in insurance.
I love it. The example that I use a lot of times is the smartphone versus the flip phone. You have a phone, but one gives you more jobs than the other. I'm not even saying that an iPhone is better for you long term, because I think there's a lot of problems with like iPhone and, is it a distraction and blah, blah, blah. But the reality is no one would argue the fact that the iPhone does more things and can do more things and has a greater utility and potential output than a flip phone. And I really believe people understood the power of life insurance. It's not just that one benefit. It does multiple things for you. And so let's dive in. We're going to be doing the countdown, and what's going to be fun is we're going to start from 11 and then go to 10, 9, 8, 7. So what we'll do is I'll give you my number 11, then you can comment if you want, but then you can give your number 11, and then we can, if there's points that you make that I want to, double down on, I can say something. You feel free to interrupt me anytime, Alden, and I hope that this is very eye-opening and life-giving for the person watching.
Perfect. Let's do it.
Number 11 for me is competitive growth. Okay. That might be shocking to the person listening to this. So much of our content is on the internal rate of return. And when life insurance is set up and used properly, it gets an amazing growth rate. But there's a lot of other benefits that I value more. And if it was just a rate of return game, I would not go for life insurance. Like, that doesn't do it for me. It's the fact that there's so many other things that we get. And so that's why competitive growth is on the list, but is actually at number 11.
Well, it's definitely made my list as well. But it's a little bit higher for a couple of reasons. I work with a good amount of higher net worth clients that are really looking to store capital in a machine, right? And they may not be leveraging it to the same extent. And so that competitive growth for most of the clients I work with is actually fairly important because we're looking multi-generationally on that. So my 11th benefit is completely different. It's actually that there's no maximum contribution limit to life insurance. So slight caveat, the single life maximum US market runs about $300 to $400 million. So in theory, if you're putting in so much premium that you're buying that much death benefit, yeah, there's a maximum. But for most people, the vast majority of people playing under that threshold, if you have a very low cost of living, but you have a very high income, we can figure out a way to get a lot of that money for you into life insurance. It's not like a qualified plan or self-directed Roth or even a SEP has some aspect of limitations on self-employed pension. SEP IRA or a SEP Roth still has those types of limitations on how much you can get into it. If we're truly going to use this as a lifetime asset, the and asset, and give a lot of the tax benefits we're going to talk about today, having no limits on what you can actually do with it, I think is important, but it's still at the bottom of the list.
Love it. I love it. All right. So number 10 for me is the critical and accelerated benefit. So essentially it's the ability to use your death benefit while you're still alive. And it's something I feel like you can't do certain activities of daily living if you get a terminal diagnosis. They're in all the policies that we set up for people have these riders built into it that essentially gives you the ability to use that death benefit while you're still alive and gives you that option to be able to do that. A lot of my list is just options of how you use your life insurance. And while this is an amazing benefit, this is number 10 for me because, again, if I had to eliminate a lot of benefits, this would be on the chopping block, although it's super valuable. It's one of those things where it's normally not the decision-making factor for me. And I think a lot of our clients wouldn't necessarily be a make or break benefit, although everyone will take it if it's included in the plan.
I was definitely ready to push back, actually ask you why it's so low on your list, but you just told me, so darn it. I don't get to be argumentative here. This is much, much higher on my list.
I told Alden before the show, let's argue. And the people,
he's not
the
letting me
YouTube
argue.
crowd, argue. Like,
make a claim and let me attack. No, it's all good. I mean, the accelerated benefits, again, much higher on my list. I have a background in healthcare, both pre-hospital and in the hospital. My mom's a palliative care physician. I've seen a lot of stuff about why this type of thing is important on the life insurance side to accelerated benefits and everything in between. So much, much higher on my list. For me, number 10 came in as just a very practical standpoint. For a lot of middle income Americans, doing this type of life insurance planning develops a structured savings plan. It kind of creates a planned contribution habit that you can maintain and increase for the rest of your life. We can say until we're blue in the face, like, if we put money away, it's going to grow and we're going to have a great retirement. But if you don't actually do that, it's like Dave Ramsey's buy term and invest the difference. Well, in the vacuum, that only could work if you're actually investing the difference, which most people don't. And then again, it still doesn't work, and we can prove that with math. But to get off that horse for a moment, structured savings plan for most people, I think, is actually a very important benefit of having this type of policy.
I love that. All right. So number 9 for me is creditor protections. Life insurance in certain states like Florida and Texas gives you a ton of creditor protections, and in some states unlimited creditor protections, which is amazing. But then there's other states like the state of California, state of Washington, that doesn't give you much at all, and it's kind of laughable. So creditor protection, I have in brackets just in my notes like the privacy aspect of it. And then also when it comes to the privacy / creditor protections, I also would include things like a 529 plan alternative. If you have your money in a life insurance policy, you don't necessarily have to report that on a FAFSA. And there's an aspect of life insurance being private that is great. So I put this as creditor protections, but you could also use the word privacy as well. And it's important. That's why it's on the list. But it's number 9 for me.
That's hilarious. I feel like the things that you're listing at the bottom are like at the top half of what I'm listing. So it'll be fun to get to that point. Love credit protection. Yes, if you're Washington, California, Rhode Island, and a handful of other places, I'd consider moving for other reasons. But the fact that they don't give you much protection in the life insurance space is a big deal. Little fun fact that some people may not be aware of. If you think back to the early 2000s, the big Enron scandal. If you do any research on that, some of the individuals that were implicated and ultimately went to prison had annuities and life insurance products that they still have access to in prison that house a decent amount of their net worth because of state protections. So not saying you should go do something like that, but at the end of the day, we don't have any control of what other people do in the litigation space. And that protection is I think, very, very important.
For someone like them, that's by far the greatest benefit. So that's what's beautiful about these benefits that we're going back and forth is everyone looks at things a little different. And that's what I just love the conversation because that's great. I'm seeing yours for the first time, and I will definitely argue over yours in a second. So say what your number 9 is.
For me, number 9 is optionality, right? So we start a plan today. Your desire for what that plan is going to do for you may change over time. But the nice thing is the way it's structured, if it's structured properly, you have an option for retirement supplementation, pension maximization. You can use it as an opportunity fund. You could have charitable intents for the death benefit. And all those things don't have to be planned into day one. It's just the fact that you have it. You have options of what you want to do with it and how you do it. So huge benefit to me. And I feel like we didn't caveat this well enough, but these are the 11 benefits of life insurance out of 60 that I can think of. I have a much longer list, but these are the top ones that we came to the table
Well,
with today.
I feel like you're cheating because I gave like actual benefits, and you're like bundling up, and you're like, hey, these like 10 things fit into optionality or all this stuff.
It's one word. It's optionality.
I love the word optionality so much. I think that would be far greater on my list because the idea, I think you use optionality as a way to talk about like retirement supplement. That's a word that I have in one of my lists. But optionality, like I almost think of like that's the definition of the and asset. It gives you ultimate options to use cash value and access it to make a move, or you have protection aspect. So I think of optionality as something like super valuable because it very much gives you options while you're accumulating, while you're in distribution and in legacy. Like if you have a life insurance policy, you have more options than less options. So that's like, I love that word. That word doesn't even make my list because that's the beautiful thing about how we took this exercise is we did it a little different, but I love the word optionality. And if that would be like near the top of my list in the way that I explained it. Next one for me is tax-free use. The idea of you being able to utilize money throughout your life in a tax-free manner. And I say quotations because it needs to be set up and used properly. Obviously, life insurance could be set up poorly or not used properly, and it's not like it's becoming tax-free. But if it's done properly, you should be able to use money throughout your life in a tax-free way. And that's super valuable. Like super valuable. I want to just not underplay it just because it's at number 8. But I sometimes think, Alden, we pitch that too much, and I think accessibility to capital is way more valuable to me than the fact that it's tax-free.
For my number 8, I have leverageable, which not actually sure if that's the correct way to say that, but it can be leveraged, right? But this isn't just at the insurance company. One of the things you can do, obviously, with your policy and your cash values is you can borrow against the cash value when you're borrowing directly from the insurance carrier. Now, in some circumstances, it may make much more sense financially to actually borrow from a third-party lender and collateralize your policy. So we've worked with clients that have done this strategy. Perhaps this is collateral for an SBA loan, Small Business Association loan as well. And so your cash value in the policy itself can serve as leverage for many different points throughout your life. And a brief example, if you have a completely paid up policy, let's say it was a 1 premium, you got $1 million death benefit. The insurance company knows you're gonna die, right? That is definite because it's already paid for. You can take that to a bank and say, hey, how much you want to bet on me dying in this time frame, and get a loan based off of that may be more or less than your cash value based on your health. So like, there are those types of lending situations as well. So when I say leverage, it's a fairly broad term, but I like it because you have so many options depending upon your circumstance to leverage the asset that you have on the table.
Love it. I love it. You're going to see that leverage is a word that actually comes up for me very low on the list in a good way. I have a different way of explaining leverage, and that's why this video is so valuable. Is we're literally using the same words, and we have different perspectives on it, which I love. So love that. All right. So for me, number 7 is tax deferred growth. When set up and used properly, your money will grow without having to pay taxes ongoing, which allows the compounding aspect of your life insurance policy to build momentum. Super valuable, but at the end of the day, again, you'll see why it's number 7 and not number 1 on the list here shortly.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I love about life insurance in this space with the cash value is this tax deferred growth. When modeled out over time, it's already net of fees, and there's no taxes to be taken out. So the numbers that you see on the page are accurate. One of the things that originally pissed me off and got me into the insurance space is working with some financial advisors who would show you that mythical one day, someday hockey stick graph of where you're going to be in a bazillion years, but it didn't have any fees calculated into it. It had taxes not calculated into it. And so it's a much more true number in my opinion. So glad it made the list. Now, 7 on mine, which is one actually you already covered, is competitive growth. Your number 11, it's my number 7. I mentioned, I think when we talked about yours, that the tax equivalent internal rate of return can actually be pretty high depending upon your tax bracket. So for some people, this is a great place to just store capital, either long-term or short-term, getting additional returns and competitive growth in a tax-free environment can be very, very beneficial.
I love it. If I were to bundle in growth and the taxes and the access, it would be far lower on my list in a positive way. when I think of benefits, I think of like actual individual uses,
Things you can use.
and
Interesting.
you're more bundling up, which I actually like your list better from an educational standpoint, because I think it's better from education. And I'm more of like, out of all the things that life insurance could do, what are the top 11 that I would take? And so love that. Number 6 for me is the retirement supplement benefit of life insurance. I don't like the word retirement, but I think if you understand what life insurance can do for someone in the future, it's almost overwhelming how many options, this is where optionality could come in, that unlock for you. But the more important thing is life insurance is an amazing protection vehicle. It's an amazing place so that you can access your money. But if we just look at access to money and protection, you might not value like having it in your retirement years, or you might be like, well, I'm not at that stage, or like, I don't need that. But if like you understand how life insurance could actually be a super bond and how it can actually make your other assets better, it really, for me, brings everything home. And so I have committed to doing a lot more content on helping people understand this, because if they get that, I think they would be a lot more excited about having it as a part of their portfolio.
Absolutely. I can completely agree that sentiment around retirement, I think that word definition means taken out of commission, and I don't want that to ever happen to me. So I think we agree on that. I like what you mentioned about just having options, right? I think this is the section where I called it optionality, right? Retirement supplementation, some of the other benefits you can get there. So it's a good spot on your list. I'm glad it's still in the top 11. Otherwise, we would have been pretty angry at you, to be honest. Diving into number 6 for me, flexibility. And I think flexibility, in my term, I'm really talking about the policy structure itself from a premium and even the death benefit perspective, because whole life insurance, when it's set up and used properly, designed properly, it can be adjusted, meaning your contributions can go down, they can go up, you can skip some, you can defer those same contributions, you can decrease the death benefit and never pay again, you could buy more death benefit. Like there's so much flexibility depending upon your situation year to year. I said it before, and I'll say it again, planning doesn't happen in a vacuum. And the vacuum that we may look at in 1 microsecond tells us one thing, but 6 years from now, you're in a completely different situation. So if you need the flexibility built into your contract, it's absolutely there for you to use it. And I think that's incredible.
Love that benefit. It didn't even make the list for me, mainly because of like flexibility is not something that like shows up in a contract that says this is flexible, but it's just like, it's the nature of the strategy aspect, which I love. And I could not agree more, is we don't know what's going to happen in the future. And giving yourself the options, again, everything goes back to options for me, makes it that much better. Love that. All right, number 5 for me is the ability to save more. And I just believe many of our clients, myself personally, am able to save a lot more money because I have access and control of my money, and I understand life insurance and all these benefits. And so because I understand all the benefits that I get with life insurance, and that's not now and in the future, I'm able to save more money confidently than in a scenario that I may put money aside for 59 and a half or something, or quote unquote retirement. I would still want to invest and save, but it would almost be like I'm giving up some control. And so like you'll see for me, the list is, I value accessibility and using my money. And so the fact that I can save more in the process, I think is a huge benefit, not just for me, but for many households. And that's one thing that Nelson Nash talked a lot about in his book, about the difference between volume of savings versus rate. And the reality is, we're obsessed with rates of return. But if we could just help people save more money in the long run, they're going to be a lot better off.
Absolutely. I think this kind of aligns with the structured saving plan concept I added for number 10. But from just saving more, you're absolutely right. And to be fair to R. Nelson Nash, I think what he was talking about from a volume perspective was the volume of interest that we pay versus our rate of return, right? In that context. But from a savings perspective, I think it works the exact same way. Right. Number 5, accessibility. So accessibility kind of tied into the leverage side of things for me, but your ability to get to your money, whether you withdraw it, lend against it, collateralize it for something else, and to do so without penalty or taxation. If you're doing it properly, I think that's a pretty powerful way to utilize this life insurance strategy.
Yeah, I agree. It's lower on the list for me, and that just tells you how much I value accessibility. And I would ask you this: if you could not access like access it, or if it was not liquid, how many people do you think currently work with us would change their policy designs if they knew they couldn't touch it till a certain age?
Yeah, I mean, if we changed our marketing and talked to a different audience, I think we'd do fine. But I think for our current audience, accessibility is absolutely imperative. Absolutely. Accessibility, I think, is really important. But at the same time, you're buying an insurance product. And I think there's a lot of value in the fact that you're buying an insurance product. So huge benefit of accessibility for sure. But it's not higher on my list toward the top, is it? And it's not higher on my list because I think the insurance aspect of things is still more important in my mind. But it's funny, Caleb, your list it sounds like the way you're speaking, you start at 11 and you're working down. I start at 11 and I'm working up. So you keep saying, oh, it's better farther down on my list in a good way. I'm like, what does he mean? And it just clicked. It just figured out what you were saying.
Yeah, down as in lower numbers, meaning good. But yes, if it's funny, our notes, I did 11 to 1 and Alden did 1 to 11. So we're like ships passing in the night kind of deal. Love it. All right. So where are we at? We're at number 4. Were you shocked when you saw this for number 4 for me? I put safety/guarantees because
I expected it to be top 5 for you.
I was thinking about this is like the way that I see life insurance, I think of it very much as a foundational place to store, protect, and use my money. And so as it's only can be foundational if you have a belief of safety and guarantees. Like if someone came to me and said, hey, Caleb, we give you all the benefits of insurance and there's a 80% chance that this thing is going to work and a 20% chance it's not, I'm out. It's the example that so many people use about airplanes. Would you get on an airplane if there's a 95% chance that it's going to land? Probably not. The answer is no. And so for me, I'm totally cool taking risk. Like I lose money all the time in business opportunities and all these things. That's why my opportunity cost of investing is high, because it's like if I'm going to tie up money, it better get me more than 8%. But if I have a foundational place to put my money, I want it safe and I do not want there to be what ifs. Hence why I'm a big fan of whole life for when we're talking about it in this lens and not necessarily speculating with other insurance products that might not be as safe. It's number 4 for me.
I think it's good. It makes the top list on mine over here as well, as you'll see in a moment. Safety is absolutely huge. So I'll touch on that in a couple of minutes, but I think I agree with everything you said. Right, on my side of the table, and I seem to be grouping multiple items into one, as you highlighted before. But for me, it's tax-favored treatment of life insurance, because it's not just that it grows tax deferred. It's not just that it gets tax-exempt distributions and tax-exempt lending against the policy leverage, right? But you also have that income tax-free death benefit. So there's 4 different places where you're getting a tax benefit for using policies. And if you're leveraging against the policy for the purpose of business investments, go talk to your CPA, you can deduct the interest that you're paying back to the insurance company. So that's 5 tax favorabilities of using an insurance policy in this way. I think that is phenomenal. And especially for individuals who have an estate tax problem. If we take life insurance, focus it to build a death benefit protection for the cheapest cost possible, warehouse that in some irrevocable trust planning outside of your estate. All of a sudden, at your passing, now your family has the liquidity to pay the US government all the taxes that they're due. And oh, by the way, you have to do that within 9 months. So if you don't have a liquidity, it becomes a big problem. And we've seen unfortunately clients and other people fire sale assets at 60 cents on the dollar to pay the tax man in 9 months. I think tax favorability all the way around from beginning to end is really, really important.
Yep. Love that. And my number 1 benefit that I'm going to talk about ties some of that in. So we'll see how that overlaps, but I love the tax favored treatment. And I love how you articulated that. Number 3 for me is the death benefit. The death benefit is one of those things that it's like obvious. Life insurance, it comes with a death benefit. And for the first couple of years of being in this space, Alden, I could care less about it. I wouldn't even like mention it in the top 11, which I'm embarrassed to talk about, just to think of like why I had such a small belief in it, because I was so caught up in like this thing. It's not the insurance, it's just an insurance wrapper. And then the more I've just experienced, had conversations, seeing one of my best friends pass away, I just realized like having a protection wrapper umbrella, having a death benefit at the center of a plan to cover your human life value is incredible. And the fact that we get all the benefits that we do and an amplified and a leveraged death benefit on top of it is pretty remarkable.
Absolutely. And I'll share a little bit more about this as well in a couple of moments. It's actually higher on my list as well. But something that I think is often overlooked with people who do what we do are really focusing on the high cash value space. A mentor one time told me this, but for young people in our space who are young in the industry, they're okay with you not focusing on the death benefit. They're okay with really focusing on that cash value growth to the exclusion of protecting your family. The longer you're in the industry, the more death claims that you deliver as an agent, you start to very quickly realize that there's a reason insurance exists, and the death benefit's not just a bonus. It is the reason, in my opinion, why insurance exists. So life insurance particularly. I absolutely agree. Top 3 for sure. All right, number 3 on my side, privacy. Privacy takes a couple of different forms in this context. One, the obvious one is that it's not a public contract. It's a private contract between you and the insurance company. It's a unilateral contract in that the insurance company has to do what they say they're going to do as long as you pay your minimum premiums. And so within that context, you don't have to share the fact that you have life insurance with anybody. Now, there's certain circumstances where it may be required to be disclosed if you're applying for Medicare, for example, or Medicaid. But in the context of your general day-to-day, you go to the loan and apply for a bank loan, you don't have to list this as an asset. If you go to the FAFSA, like you mentioned before, you don't have to live your life insurance cash value as an asset because into the industry, cash value is a byproduct of life insurance. It's not the focus. So most places don't consider it an asset class. The number of times I have had to explain to a mortgage broker what cash value is in life insurance is shockingly annoying. Because using it for collateral for the loan or ultimately using it as a down payment, right? It's private, and I think it's a huge benefit because if you're storing hundreds of thousands of dollars into a life insurance policy over the course of your life, nobody else needs to know where you're putting your money. This is the reason personal finance is personal is because it's personal. You shouldn't have to disclose everything that you're doing with your finances.
I love the privacy aspect of it. Before we go into the top 2, which will be very exciting, I just want to say if you are watching this video and you want to learn more from Alden or someone on our amazing team about maybe your financial situation, you might have an insurance policy that you want us to take a look at, or you want to just learn more to say, like, does this make sense for my financial life? There'll be a link down below. We also have a link if you want to learn more. We have a life insurance vault with a ton of resources. And so just wanted to make a call to action because we're trying to grow the BetterWealth family, and the more people that we can talk to and serve, the better. So with that, number 2 benefit, which is like we're now getting real serious here, is accessibility for me. Accessibility, because if I didn't have access to my funds, then all these other benefits, like it's just valuable to me having access to funds. Because even like the death benefit, why is the death benefit number 3 and accessibility number 2 is death benefit's really important. I would go a different route. I would go maybe like a guaranteed universal life, where it's like I guarantee get my death benefit for my family. But the fact of the matter is, because I have that accessibility, I will change my behavior and be able to fund a lot of money into life insurance and get all the benefits long term, which I'm stoked about. But I'm only going to do that if I have access to my money throughout my life. That gives me the permission slip to say, yeah, I'm going to fund and I'm going to put a lot of money into life insurance. So hopefully you kind of see the logic of like, I love all the benefits that I've mentioned to date. All those are made possible because I have access. And so I'm giving it maturity and time to benefit all those.
Yeah. So I love that you said it the way that you did, because it makes me want to put accessibility higher on my list, because you're exactly right. The accessible nature of it makes some of the other benefits I listed possible. So completely agree with that. And something that a mentor of mine told me is that there's an immediate vesting period when it comes to life insurance. You can access it within 15 to 30 days if it's built properly for cash value. And so compare that to like any other savings vehicle outside of a savings account, like qualified plan, those types of things. It's hugely beneficial to have access. So I completely agree with that. It's awesome. Number 2 for me is safety. And this goes back to one of the terms that you use all the time, Caleb, is that life insurance, when it's set up and used properly, and it's the right product for the right person, provides a huge degree of safety. Safety, again, just like a lot of my list here, involves multiple things. I think a big one is lack of volatility, right? So if we're using a whole life insurance contract with a mutual carrier with a nearly 2-century track record, yeah, there's going to be volatility in the dividend. But the assumption is they're going to continue to pay dividends like they have for the last 177 years, #PennMutual, right? So there's a lot of safety in the fact that the life insurance cash value is going to go up every single year without fail because it's guaranteed. The only question is how fast, right? And if the contract is structured properly, You also get these other aspects of a guaranteed increasing death benefit every year. You also get, and that's carrier to carrier, guaranteed cash value increase every year. And the safety protection, the safety side of things, I think is very close aligned to this concept of protection you talked about earlier with creditor protection, right? You can put it in there. It's warehouse. It's protected under state law in most states. And I think that's a huge value for a lot of our clients.
I think that's well said. I look forward to hearing people's thoughts in the comments on how you would make the list. Like, how would you make the order, and what benefits maybe that Alden and I talked about that wasn't even on your radar. So we're looking forward to hearing from you. My number one. You ready for this, Alden?
Tune back in next week to see Caleb's number one. We'll do.
Yeah. Tune in. Yeah. Commercial break. My number one benefit is leverageability. Now, let me explain. Okay. I'm not just meaning the leveraging infinite banking style, like getting a loan rate at 5 or 6% from the insurance carrier. That's not what I'm talking about. The way that I define leverage is an amplifier, and I ultimately believe that leverage is a stacking mechanism. So the fact that I get competitive growth, the fact that I get accelerated death benefit, the fact that I get creditor protections, the fact that I get tax treatment, the fact that I get optionality in retirement, the fact that I get to save more and it's safe and I get a death benefit, and oh, by the way, I have access, is how I'm bundling it up into the word leverageability. I actually think a better word for this would be optionality. That's why it's hilarious that that's number 9 on your list, because I actually like leverage and optionality is very similar to me. And so the idea that I can do one thing, but I also get all the other benefits is the reason why accessibility is number 2. So, and guys, by the way, this is our YouTube channel. We can make up the rules. So if you're like, Caleb, you're totally cheating and blah, blah, I don't really care. This is our YouTube channel. We're making that. So, but that's why it's number 1. And that's why I put competitive growth as number 11, is because I knew it was all going to get tied together. But yeah, that's how I would answer the most important benefit for me when it comes to overfunded or max funded whole life insurance.
That's great. And Kel, I'm going to put your feet to the fire for a second here. One of the first times you and I had a conversation was in Garden of the Gods many years ago. And I asked you one of the questions I like to ask people is, how could I bring value to you? One of the things you said at that time was encourage me to continue to produce content, right? Okay, we're doing that. Amazing. But you also said, I want to write another book. And the name of that book at the time was Value Leveraging. Feet to the fire here, bro. Like, that would be an awesome book to write, because you talk about leverage so eloquently. And I think a lot of our clients would love to see that published.
I appreciate the call out. And yes, when I get my act figured out on how to crank out books, it's on the short list, and it's something that I feel very strongly about. And you're totally right. So thank you. Value Leverage is a book that will be written in the future. And so thank you for the call out.
Value Leverage 2026. There we go. All right. My number 1 in this conversation is the word protection. For me, life insurance is the number 1 benefit of life insurance. The fact that we have the ability to protect human life value, mom and pops, single moms, like everything across the board, and protect their interests, their family, their kids. I think the fact that death benefit exists is extremely important. So number 1 for me is protection. Death benefit, the income tax-free death benefit, providing liquidity. I had a client many years ago, actually one of my first clients, said, like, Alden, I don't want to make anybody rich when I die. In that conversation, I had no words to articulate the importance of death benefit, because I hadn't been around long enough to be able to do that. Ultimately, they ended up, that was actually a best friend of mine as she passed away. And so it's like death benefit became infinitely more important after that conversation, where I failed as an agent of providing value to somebody, because I was afraid of damaging the relationship. I didn't want to push too hard. So if any of my clients know this, if you talk to me, I'm gonna push you a little bit on protecting your family, and it's a number that you have to decide on. But at the end of the day, death benefit protection, it's only a benefit in the fact that now your family has time to breathe after something happens. It's only a benefit that it provides liquidity. It's only a benefit that it gives your grieving spouse, grieving family members, grieving kids options. And maybe your spouse doesn't have to go out and find a sugar daddy, right? So that to me is huge. Then additionally, I wrapped in living benefits, right? So accelerated death benefit rider, chronic terminal illness, those types of things are all in here as well, because it protects something. One of the things that you've probably noticed with my content is I talk about long-term care insurance. I talk about disability income insurance because I believe in it. I think it's important. At the end of the day, Insurance is insurance. Everything else is a bonus in my mind. Protection for me comes first.
Love it. I love how you bundle a lot. There's a lot when you talk about protection. You talk about creditor protections. You're talking about accelerated death benefit. You're talking about the death benefit itself. You're talking about many other aspects of that as well. So Alden, thank you. Love this format. Can't wait to hear the feedback. We want to hear from you. Thank you for all the people that watch our videos, subscribe to the channel, that make comments. As you can maybe see on YouTube, we're building some momentum, and that's only possible because of you. And so from the bottom of my heart, thank you. If there's anything that we can do to be of service to you and help you in what you're up to, please don't hesitate to reach out and subscribe for more content like this.